Today's topic will be continuing my reviews of Season 6B of Doctor Who by Big Finish. I have recently reviewed Beyond War Games on the channel. If you want to check that release out, it will be as a card on the video and as well in the description down below. But this installment, I'll be taking a look at the recently released in July of this year, James Robert McCrimmon. It's quite depressive that there's a year gap between each release, because after finishing this, I'm in a real Season 6B mood. Big Finish's focus on bringing Season 6B into the brand new box set format for the Doctors has proven one of the best directions they could do for the second Doctor, with the Doctor himself being a pawn by the sinister Time Lord secret organisation, the Celestial Intervention Agency, who Agent Raven using the Doctor and offering him a path to prevent his punishment of being exiled to Earth, but to be forced as an agent for the CIA. Here, in this release, James Robert McCrimmon, we have Raven more inclined to recruit an older version of Jamie to make the Doctor a more successful tool for the CIA. So yes, welcome to my review of James Robert McCrimmon, the second release in Season 6B of Doctor Who by Big Finish. I would say this is the range so far which I am more engrossed to explore. Then again, I'm going to have to wait until July 2024 to get the next box set. It's structured a little bit differently compared to the first box set, which was 2 stories being 4 parts each. These are 3 stories at 2 parts each, being an hour in length. First story, we have Jamie by Mark Wright. The second story, which has got a lot of buzz, The Green Man by Paul Verhoeven, and The Shroud by Bob Ayres, who written the Demon Song for the first Doctor box sets. Now, what am I looking for in this release? I want it to continue the feelings and the atmosphere which Season 6B captures. It's dark, it's bleak, gravitas, foreboding, and apprehension. And these stories, yet they nail that feeling. Foreboding despair and the Doctor battling for his freedom of a very tyrannical part of the Time Lord Society with the Celestial Intervention Agency, and definitely more of a mental warfare battle between the Doctor and Raven. We get that more in this box set than this, which I am very happy to say. Just this mental warfare between the two of them I really like. Beyond War Games got an 8 out of 10 overall, so I'm hoping that this box set was to achieve on the same level or potentially even higher, because again, Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor era, my favourite era of the show, my favourite incarnation of the Doctor, so of course I have high expectations. And as a note of transparency, I buy these box sets and these Big Finish stories with my own money, and I don't receive review copies, just in case you wanted transparency of how I obtain these releases. But as I said, this is the series I am most engrossed with when it comes to Big Finish. They're the ones I'm just extremely excited about, because sometimes with Big Finish I have to be in the mood for them to actually just really just engross into the stories, but these I have been well impressed. Well impressed. I only have one personal note with the first and the second Doctor box sets. I wish they released them at the same... I wish they did releases very similar to the third Doctor era by doing 2 a year instead of 1. I just think it's... I know Big Finish's output is rather large, but I feel like the 60s maybe need a little bit more love, but that's personally just me. If not, then it's totally fine, because I think the Season 6B stuff is just nailing it. I just think the weight is just... well, it's painful. But that means I like the release, clearly. Anyway, let's start my review of James Robert McCrimmon, starting with the first story from the set, Jamie by Mark Wright. Mark Wright in the first box set with a final beginning alongside Nicholas Briggs nails the first story with the aftermath story of the evil of the Daleks, so I had good expectations. And Mark Wright, who often collaborates with Karen Scott through previous releases and a writer I often give high marks. So right now with Final Beginning is the story to beat and remains #1 so far at this moment in time, What about the story Jamie? Does Mark Wright succeed? We first begin with a flash forward sequence of the Doctor being acquainted by Jamie, being attacked by some entity, and Jamie remembering the Doctor. They're both in a predicament, we don't know how they got in. Jamie is then recovered and aided by a person called Ellen, who mentions the Doctor and doesn't have a recollection of a person named the Doctor. This is one of the stories which is like out of order, out of sequence, with many different like flash forward and then flashback sequences that then connects the story. And I was thinking at the top of my head, if people started out with this box set first and not this one, I think some people will be put off, because I do like it, a Big Finish with the first story, but they're taking risks, they're doing something a little bit, I would say the word experimental. I was kind of thinking experimental, but then going back to the 1 to 50 Big Finish monthly range audios, I would definitely call that experimental. But this, I would say, a little bit more risk taking, I believe is the better statement to make. Taking a little bit more of a risk and doing a story which is told with many flashbacks and flash forward sequences. Raven is more involved in the activity of the story. Her response to events that happen in the story, she has a very emotionless way of talking. We witness a death, and a very savage and brutal death that even puts Raven a little bit on edge, which she prefers more controlling and under the thumb way of planning out things, which seeing something so savage, unpredictable, but cause deterioration puts the Doctor on edge too, and something not a human can do. These gas entities with some scenes do like to play with their prey, when the Doctor points out when being with Jamie. Scenes from different points of events, with the Doctor before meeting Jamie, them together, and then after Jamie was attacked and awake in a Edinburgh castle. Yeah, it's a little jarring, I do admit, it does jump quite frequently. The entities, I would say they're not, compared to the other stories and the other villains that you face, the Doctor and Jamie face in this box set, I would say they're a little bit underdeveloped in this compared to the other two stories. So even though these flash forward, flashback sequences are a little jarring, in my opinion, it does keep the story rather ambiguous to what the hell is going on. And I would say how it wraps it up, it does it pretty damn well in my opinion. Trying to figure out the motivations of Raven, who is a very sadistic character, very much a sociopath, and then these entities too, just adds a layer of ambiguity to the story. Though when I got to the halfway mark with this, I was saying to myself, this is definitely not on the level of The Final Beginning, which is Mark Wright's other story, who we collaborated with Nick Briggs. No, that one just, it was just a stronger story. All the aspects I'm looking for with Season 6B, plus it was a very entertaining story, and as well, ambiguous, you didn't really know what was happening, and it eventually revealed everything. Here, it's a little bit more risk-taking. I do find it a little bit jarring, as I've stated, and I would say the majority of people would rank this and rate it the lowest out of the other two stories, which I do personally. I do think it's a very entertaining and a very good story, which wraps up rather well, but in comparison with the other two, the Green Man and the Shroud, I would say it is the weakest. Definitely has some very interesting scenes with the Doctor and Raven, as I previously stated, of mental warfare between the two of them. The Doctor does attempt to not let Raven almost bully the Doctor. Raven has a rather superiority complex and a rather condescending attitude because she enjoys controlling people, which makes her a good agent for the CIA. You're not meant to like the character in the first place, you're supposed to really despise her, which then again is a very well written character. She is a sadistic sociopath, and I would say Emma Noakes is the best thing out of these releases in my opinion. She just nails the role so damn well. Very impressed. It does feel that the plot is a little thin, and that tells me it overly relies on the out of sequence approach and the flash forward, flashback sequences to move the story forward for the listener, but still holds the feeling of dread for the Doctor and Raven being very cold and callous in her attitude and reinforcing the feeling of the Doctor battling for his freedom. Jamie doesn't feel shoehorned into the set, which I'm very happy to say. It doesn't feel out of place, and Mark Wright delivered it rather well of having these dream sequences of trying to remember the Doctor, forgetting him, and it's a battle of Jamie remembering his true self. I think it could have been done better how it was incorporated by Mark Wright. But yet the final act, it puts things together rather well. Raven is being cryptic as anything, like she's alluding that she knows the answers already and has this condescending attitude that the Doctor has not yet got it at the moment. Like, "Oh Doctor, have you not figured it out by now?" One of those lines. But overall, I think it's a very entertaining story. It's personally the weakest out of the set for me, but nothing I would consider average or below average. In fact, it was very enjoyable. Again, the outer sequence storytelling might put some listeners off. So Mark Wright's story, Jamie, gets a 7 out of 10. A pretty good story. I enjoyed it. Definitely some very good character development and incorporating Raven more into Season 6B. So let's move on to the second story of the set, The Green Man by Paul Verhoeven. And it's got really, really good feedback. Yes, I have been hearing quite a bit of praise when it comes to The Green Man by Paul Verhoeven. Never personally heard of this writer, but yeah, I was hearing very good things. I'm glad I didn't get spoiled with spoilers, because it definitely has some wow, didn't expect that moments in this story. All I would say is that it's incorporating something 1970s into a 1960s Base Under Siege story. Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it? And I will not say any more that alludes to what that 1970s thing is. Raven tasks the Doctor and Jamie to go to the Grove, a rehabilitation centre for the ultra wealthy and rich, and promises to help the wealthy and the rich in the galaxy to cheat death. When a reunited Doctor and Jamie are dispatched by Raven to investigate the disappearance of a rogue Time Lord, they are greeted by Overseer Fuller. The Doctor is playing the role of a patient to get into the establishment, and Jamie as a carer. This acts as a fantastic character relationship and banter between the two characters, and 100% The Green Man. How the dialogue was written was just beyond flipping fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Such a good idea to bring Jamie back. And what I previously forgot to say with the first story, Jamie, how he is incorporated into Season 6B with the whole premise of his mind being wiped. That too was incorporated very well. It's just something I forgot to add. But yeah, back to The Green Man. Love their interactions. It was flipping fantastic. So when I was reading the bio synopsis of The Green Man, I was thinking, kind of sounds a bit like a thriller, really, like some thriller books I've read. And then when I listened to it, I said, my word, this was not what I expected. It was not what I expected. Some of the twists, some of the reveals, I was shocked that they managed to do this, because they incorporated something related to the 1970s and put it in a 1960s story, and my mind was like, oh, about time too. Such a I really want to say it, but I can't spoil it, because when it was revealed, I want you to experience that feeling too. So I'm not going to mention it. And if I cover it a little bit too much, I might potentially accidentally reveal it. The Green Man does fantastic work in expanding Season 6B of what's taken place so far, as Jamie and the Green Man have quite a noticeable gap of other stories that have taken place, which is cool. The Grove, a hospital and a retreat for the ultra wealthy and rich, which Raven is offering. But Raven really wants the Doctor and Jamie to apparently collect a rogue missing Time Lord. The issue is only the ill can get in. Jamie must play the role of a carer and the Doctor as a patient. Very fun premise. Compared to the first story, the relationship between the two characters and the roles is very fun and entertaining. Dialogue is top notch, which Big Finish often always nail, but here it's just like a level above. It just takes me back to watching 1960s Patrick Troughton and Second Doctor stories. Then you witness the Overseer, who originally, even the Doctor, your feelings is exactly what the Doctor and Jamie are feeling. He doesn't exactly feel untrustworthy. He's just a little bit of an oddball. He's just a bit weird. Who seems to have very bad memory. If that was generally because of age or something a little bit more significant, that is what I was thinking about. Then the Doctor and Jamie at night see a very faint glowing green man and quickly disappears without a trace. Then the Doctor has nightmares of his independent doom, of having nightmare visions of Autons and Silurians. This impending doom of his exile is something that's always been apparent in these releases, which I freaking love. This impending doom that the Doctor and as well Jamie will face. If they fail the CIA, then the Doctor is sent into exile, doomed on planet. If Jamie doesn't agree to the CIA's request, he is stuck in an Edinburgh prison. God knows what his fate will be. When the Green Man is revealed, you have this very foreboding feel. And the Doctor and Jamie are the main driving force behind the story. There is no other supporting characters besides the supposed Green Man, the Overseer, the Doctor and Jamie. That's it. Discover a terrifying realization. They are the only ones in the hospital. Jamie makes rather smart connections to somebody disappearing and resulting to digging someone up in a courtyard to find this so-called person. The lack of scenes of the Overseer makes you suspicious of him, and the Doctor has to stay in the hospital as he is supposed to be a patient and not dig in to avoid suspicion. It then becomes apparent that the Doctor and Jamie are supposedly the only ones there, which makes the scenes of the Green Man all the more skin-crawling, as they are the only ones to deal with the potential dangers, which Raven says that there are no potential dangers, but yes, it's not proved that she's very reliable and that she's trustworthy. She is actually quite the liar. Part 1's cliffhanger took me back. I was like, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Finally, just damn finally, a Big Finish or something related to Doctor Who has done this. That is what I was saying. The tensions in part 2 are very high, and I can confidently say that the Green Man is my favourite Season 6B related story when it comes to Big Finish Productions. The Green Man was simply a wonderful story in many aspects. A very interesting story, very awesome setting of a hospital where all the patients were killed. The Doctor and Jamie's interactions were beyond brilliant and my favourite in the entire box set. Paul Verhoeven, who I'm hopefully saying his surname correctly, freaking nailed this story. He just nailed it to a T in all its aspects. Raven really 100% shows some dark, sadistic, sociopathic tendencies. Emma Noakes is too damn good. Now this is where we see the Doctor put in a corner a little bit too much here. It's like you're cornering a wolf in the corner. Eventually it's gonna bite. And the Doctor does threaten Raven that if you push him too far, it might bite back against you, and you have this feeling that eventually Raven will get bitten back. But she has such a superiority complex, and she is so used to controlling people under her thumb, she can't see that because her pride denies it. She's a sadistic sociopath, but flipping hell, what an ending to with Raven. What a sadistic, sociopathic Time Lord. when it comes to sadistic, sociopathic characters, I believe like Raven is like near the top. Yeah, Emma Noakes, I think, deserves the trophy for best performance in this entire series, 100%. What do I give the Green Man? I give it a 9.5 out of 10. I was freaking impressed with the Green Man. Yeah, it seems like it was getting a lot of buzz, and I agree, it's a very, very strong story. And at this moment in time, it is beating the final beginning. It's the best story in Season 6B with Big Finish Productions. So, yeah, really strong. Really, very, very happy. But does The Shroud deliver? Let's review The Shroud by Bob Ayres. I admit, The Shroud, Bob Ayres, he has got a challenge. He has got a real big challenge to try and deliver a story equal to The Green Man. But let's not do any suspense. Is The Shroud a good story? Yes, it is. It is a good story. So this box set I was very impressed with, clearly. The Shroud features sirens and a world-ending situation on the planet Nineveh of a huge entity of some sort called the Shroud, which is completely covering the sun, which is eliminating all light on the planet, and the colonists on the planet have become blind, and it's been resulted to creating dreamscape technology to combat the Shroud. Then you also have these squid-like creatures which have now turned up on the planet. Are they taking advantage of the Shroud entity that's consumed the planet? Are they responsible for the Shroud? What is their involvement? Again, the whole thing of the Shroud brings the feelings of Season 6B to a T of just foreboding terror and despair and dread. The Shroud almost like brings together all those words. So arriving on the planet Nineveh, the Doctor and Jamie find a desperate human colony fighting the effects of a devastating super weapon known as the Shroud, nullifying all light and rendering humans blind. And out of the blue, with the Shroud consuming the planet and its light, we have invaders dubbed squids, and it's only a matter of time before the colony falls. The Doctor and Jamie, between helping humans fight back these so-called squids and investigating their latest mission for the Time Lords. But why has Raven sent the Doctor and Jamie? That was deliberately left ambiguous for a reason. We do not see Raven. We do not see Raven in any introduction scenes. We're only guessing why that's the case. And the reason I do find pretty hilarious, considering what Raven is all about as a character who likes to control people. The Shroud has proven very effective of rendering the population weakened, struggling for food and supplies, and for an alien race dubbed the Squids taking advantage of the situation and apparently invading the planet. This story is constantly moving. It's got terrific pace. You always hear battle, war, despair, fighting between the squids and the humans and the human colonists. It's a very dark, grimy, depressing story and atmosphere. That is what I'm looking for Season 6B. Part 1 is a battle for survival, with the Doctor taken by the squids who helped the colonists in the first place, and he himself is taken to a so-called concentration camp, or referred to as an eating place for the squids to consume humans. And then we reveal that their actual name are called Harkin, and the Doctor is talking to a so-called medic. So we then reveal the intentions of what the squid or the Harkin are all about and their involvement on the planet, what they are trying to do and achieve, and what supposed connections do they have with the Shroud, or what even it is the Shroud in the first place. It says that it's a apparent super weapon, but it's actually a lot more than just a super weapon. So that's what part 2 achieves. It reveals the intentions of the Harkins or Squids, and I would say I did predict it, but just because I predicted something doesn't mean it like it's bad in any way. I just had an idea that that was the direction it was heading with the story regarding the Harkin. Part 2 takes the direction of the Doctor, who have to play the role of a diplomat and explain the situation regarding the Harkin Squids and the Shroud. That is what I was wanting to happen, but yeah, you don't really see any like a diplomatic approach with the humans and the Squids, because they were supposedly at each other's throats and the Doctor was supposed to play a diplomat to come to some sort of agreement, but that doesn't really happen. It's just like, oh, whatever. The humans have been like hating these squid-like entities for invading their planet, supposedly, apparently, but that's not really touched upon, and I think it should have been. It was very minimal. The mystery of the Shroud is built up pretty well. It's a lot more than just a super weapon, and I only revealed this part of it. It's connected somehow with Raven. Raven didn't make the Shroud or anything like that, but there is a somewhat of a connection between Raven and the Shroud, which I find it pretty flippin' ironic and funny, considering Raven likes to control people and put things under her thumb. The Shroud isn't something that really can be controlled. So the last thing I would say, the people or whoever made the Shroud can't switch it off, so it becomes a lot more than just a diabolical super weapon. And it even worries Raven somewhat. How this story concludes, I find it very interesting and very ambiguous. The pathway they're going to take Raven, it's definitely not the end of Raven, no, not whatsoever what happens to her. And the Doctor and Jamie, that is just left completely ambiguous. And then after the Shroud story and into the epilogue scenes, you're left with this feeling of terror and horror for the Doctor. The Doctor has this feeling of dread that there will be something after him, because he is supposed to be exiled on Earth and forced to regenerate, but he's still here. So it's almost like a ticking time bomb of what's eventually going to come for him and deal with him. Overall, this is a very enjoyable story with many twists and turns at an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed the box set, and it ended very ambiguous for what's going to happen with the Doctor and Jamie with the whole season 6B arc. I am really engrossed, and now we have to wait for a year. Flipping hell. So my overall thoughts and feelings and rating on James Robert McCrimmon. This is a flipping good box set. And even though I was putting these two together, and I was saying to myself, these are pretty much equal, but if I had a gun to myself and I had to rate one better than the other, personally, I think the better box set is this one. Why? Not just the Green Man, but I think the development and the push with the Doctor and Raven having this mental warfare with each other just increases the feeling of terror and the battle of freedom, which season 6B is all about. This is still flipping good. I just think this is just a smidge better. They're honestly the same rating, but if I had to pick one, I think this one is slightly better. Jamie is the weak story in the set, but no means a bad story, and isn't. The Shroud takes this series in a really interesting direction. Season 6B is completely left ambiguous now, and the Green Man is the best Season 6B story by Big Finish. 100%. I rate James McCrimmon a very strong 8 out of 10. Flipping good box set. Now we have to wait until July 2024 for release number 3. That is actually quite sad, I must admit.